Back in my day, when a game was exclusive, it meant that it was only playable on one platform. It was not released on multiple different platforms. It was exclusive, meaning you can only play it in one place. And now, exclusive, the way that that term is defined is just so loose now. Like, when people talk about Xbox exclusives, even though Microsoft releases all their first party games on PC, so by definition, it's multi-platform if it's on Xbox and PC, but people still call them exclusives. And now Sony's doing it too. We have a number of PlayStation games that are now on Steam on PC. Not all of them, so it's not quite to the level that Microsoft is doing it, but Sony's also trying to capitalize on the PC gaming market. Nintendo's the only one now that isn't releasing any of their games on any other platform. You can only play the games on the Nintendo Switch. Aside from emulation, of course, I heard they already got the new Zelda game running on the Switch emulator. So if you know how to and you want to, you can play Tears of the Kingdom on PC in 4K. And depending on your PC, obviously, you can run it much better than on the original hardware. But officially, Nintendo does not put their games on other platforms, and they do not want their games to be on any other platform aside from the Switch. And there's a reason for that, because console manufacturers, they typically sell their console at a loss because the main moneymaker behind these consoles is not the exclusive games, and definitely not the sale of the console itself. It's the third-party games. It's you buying the games on their digital storefront, or, if you still buy a physical copy. But Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo all get a cut from those game sales, and that's where a bulk of their profits are made. The purpose of the exclusive games is to give you a reason to invest in the platform in the first place, and then hopefully you stick around and keep buying games on that platform. If they just put all their games on PC, there is much less of a reason to buy a Nintendo console if you can just play all the games on a different platform, especially on PC, because the games will play and run so much better and will be a better experience than what the Switch could offer. I just don't see any reason why Nintendo would want to release their games on PC or any other platform when they have a lot more to gain by just sticking with the exclusivity model, because they're making so much money from the Switch. Switch it's the best-selling console they've ever had. If you count the DS, even though it's a handheld, the Switch is also a handheld, but it's a hybrid, and it's also a home console, so I don't know how you would categorize it, but okay, it's still one of the greatest-selling video game systems of all time, so why would they change their model? They have no reason to, financially. Like, aside from a few collectors, who the hell has a PC and a PlayStation 5? Or who has a PC and an Xbox Series X? There's no reason to have both if you know eventually all the exclusives are going to come to PC. Talking from my own experience, Sony has definitely made a lot less money from me over the years when they started putting their games on PC, because I'm not going to buy a PlayStation 5 knowing that eventually, even though they don't release it day and date, I'm a very patient man. I can wait 3 or 4 years for Spider-Man 2 to come out, because that's their thing. They release it exclusive, but it's really a timed exclusive for PlayStation 5. Eventually, you know what's coming to PC. I don't know that I would have bought a PlayStation 5 by now if Sony did not put their games on PC, but I could tell you there's like a 100 times more likely to have bought one if they did not have their games on PC, because exclusive games is literally the reason to buy any platform. The exclusive content is what hooked me into the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, but most of the games I bought were not exclusives. They were third-party games. Because I was part of the PlayStation ecosystem now, I was invested in that platform, I was buying games on there, no matter what kind of games they were. So by putting their games on PC, Sony has effectively lost me as a customer. Because even though I'll buy the games that they put out on PC, Sony's getting a lot less of my money than they did years ago. And since I'm an adult I'm actually working and I have a job and I have income, the fact that they made more money out of me when I had $500 a year for video games, whether it was birthday money or Christmas money, whatever, that I gave them more money back then than I do now, that is a pretty sad thing. With Microsoft, it kind of makes sense because their approach really is Game Pass. That's their main thing that they're hoping is going to lead them into the future. So you can't have a successful subscription service with what would effectively be a $500 paywall if Game Pass and Xbox games were only playable on an Xbox console. So with Microsoft, things are kind of different, their priorities are different, and it makes complete sense to have their games on PC for that reason. If Sony allowed Game Pass to be on the PlayStation, then we would also be getting Xbox games on PlayStation as well. So I guess the only reason Nintendo would have to put their games on PC or any other consoles would be if they wanted to compete with Game Pass, basically. If they want to have their own subscription service. But I don't think Nintendo wants to take that risk. I think they're fine just the way things are. They're making a lot of money. Why change it up if it's not even guaranteed that it's going to be successful? People would assume, oh, Nintendo has such a vast library of games over like 40 years. Of course, a Nintendo subscription service would be immensely successful, but that's never guaranteed. We see all these subscription services completely falling apart and imploding because there's just too many of them. Eventually, that's going to happen with video game subscription services as well. Like if Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, EA, Activision, supposedly they're going to be part of Microsoft. We'll see how that goes. But Ubisoft, so many different companies can do that, can start their own subscription service. They already have. Like, you know, EA has an agreement with Microsoft, and Ubisoft has an agreement with Sony, but eventually they're probably going to try to break off, and the market will just be so overwhelmed with all of these subscriptions that it's going to be bad. Not to mention, like, especially when we're talking about Nintendo, if they're going to go the streaming route like Xbox is with Game Pass, they would not be able to compete. Their online infrastructure is a joke. Even basic online features they do not have on the Nintendo Switch. Like, I just can't imagine them doing streaming and stuff like that. They would have to completely overhaul their company and their corporate structure and, like, just do all these things. And for what? They're already raking in billions every year. People obviously still want to buy consoles. People still want to buy Nintendo consoles. And I just can't see them being as successful if they went multi-platform, because their best-selling games on the Switch, they're all first-party games. Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, Zelda Breath of the Wild, so many of those games. Pokemon. Like, they would just be leaving so much money on the table. Like, it would completely offset the money they would potentially gain from PC gamers. As much of a nice thought as it would be, I mean, I would love to play Mario and Zelda and all those games on PC, but Nintendo has zero reason financially to do that. Again, with Microsoft, it's different because they have the whole Game Pass thing, and they don't necessarily care about hardware sales or anything like that. Like, of course, they want to be competitive in the console space, but that's not their main thing that they're focused on. And with Sony, they just want to have their cake and eat it too. They assume that people are going to buy the PlayStation for the timed exclusivity of their games, and 3 or 4 years later, when the game is already kind of dead and no one really cares for it anymore, oh, let's release it on PC. But I'm sure there are a lot of people like me that now are not as invested into Sony anymore, not giving them as much money, knowing that, you know, you could just stick with PC and don't have to buy a PlayStation. It's definitely hurting Sony's overall sales for games on the PlayStation Store and all that. So I think eventually they're going to pivot away from that. They're going to go back to having real exclusives, no more PC releases, if I had to make a prediction for that. And I don't think Nintendo's ever going to come over to PC.